What is up, pod pals? It's your buddy Adam, and you are listening to Let's Talk About Your Podcast, where I deliver some podcast launch tips. And today we're doing a podcast launch strategy session. My friend Christy is here, and I tell you, I've got that certain feeling about this one, pod pals. I feel like she's got a great show in the works. She's got a great concept. She's got an awesome brand. I'm really going to cheer her on to get this thing launched. So Christy, we're going to dive in. I've got lots of ideas, but I want to kind of start off with your brand. Could you just describe your brand a little bit and what it is you do and who you're trying to serve with your brand?
So as far as the brand goes, my mission is to help entrepreneurs to, launch to their audience, show up the best way that they can for their audience, which, having someone behind the scenes helping you out with all the moving components and parts like that. But really, because there are so many great services and products out there, it's a shame that someone who possibly did it by themselves, possibly feels as though that because no one bought the first time that they shouldn't, or that what they have is a bad idea. And that's not the case. It's just really going in with the strategy and a plan. And then, of course, if someone's a seasoned launcher that they just don't want to do it by themselves anymore, and they just want to be able to show up for their audience, is how I also help.
Okay, so can you just give us an example of a recent launch or somebody that you've helped that obviously you don't have to name names or anything like that, but I'm very interested in the process of this. So somebody hires you on, you start to work together. Obviously there's probably some prep and then there's actual launch mode. What do those things look like for you?
So as far as right now, I'm actually in the middle of a launch. And so my client's going to be launching mid-September. And when we first started talking, we really had to hash out, what the strategy was going to be, because there's workshop, there's challenges, and all of those extras that sometimes. And so what the strategy was going to be, and then taking it off of her plate, because she still has to show up for her clients that she has. She still has to show up for her membership. She still has to show up for her, her family, right? So finding that time to put all that together while also going through a launch. And, as we're talking in that first strategy session, it's really when the client starts to realize that all of these moving parts are actually taken off of their shoulders. And when I talk about the moving parts, getting the email campaign, even edited, even if you have that asset already created, you still have to edit and go through it and make sure that it still applies to today. And then also your social media campaign, even if you may have it, still needs to be edited, still needs to be relevant to today. And then as well as updating the site and all the links and making sure all of that back portion, that's a lot that's going to go up in the front end. So really, when working with clients, putting all that together in the front end of, an 8-week span is the minimum that I like to work with a client, because there's so many components. And once we get to that launch mode, realizing a lot of them start to realize like, oh my goodness, like we have it all done. It's all completed. We just have to do checks here and there. And we really load the front weeks so that when they show up, they can show up in the best way possible. So they're not worried about a link breaking. If a link does break, it's tech is going to be faulty sometimes. We try our best to, make sure that it doesn't, but just in case it does happen to break, there's someone there that as they're showing up live, they have that, someone else is taking care of it, so they can show up as their best self.
Well, this is why I'm really into the idea of you having a podcast, because I love it when podcasters have processes and like there is a journey that you can walk people through and go, hey, this is step A, this is step B, this is, if you experience these symptoms, this is the fix. And you have so much experience in this realm of launches that I know entrepreneurs suck at, myself included. Like I'm that creative entrepreneur. I'm ideal. Like you're like, I'm definitely gonna have to hire you in the future next time I launch something, because here's what I love to do. I love to create. And then I spend all the time creating. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And the website and the course and the coaching package and this and that. And then I'm like wore out by the time it's time to launch. I'm like, oh, I'll just send it to my list. One email. I'm tired. And that's what I do. I'll send like one email. I'm like, let's create another thing. So having backup to kind of put structure behind the launch process and power me through it That's something that I need. So we're going to do business in the future. All right. Now let's talk about your podcast. That's the name of the dang show here. So I really, really like how dialed in you are with knowing who you're trying to serve, those types of entrepreneurs, and how you're going to serve them. And again, your brand is perfect for the podcast medium because it's tips based, it's process based. And okay, so I'm very excited about that. Now, when I asked you in your info sheet, I'm like, do you have any ideas for a potential title for your podcast? And you said the Star Launch Lab. Why? Tell me why you picked that name, first of all. And I've got an idea.
Well, I wanted to keep it on brands, but then I realized that there's actually another podcast that's kind of using that terminology. So really just wanted to keep it on brands with Star Launches Boutique. And it's really the main reason for that name.
Okay. Now, when it comes to the title of a show, there's some techniques that we can massage in there. I get your want to be on brand, but that was a mistake that I made with my first health show. My website, my company was transformationcoach.me LLC. So I was like, and that was my website. I'm like, oh, that's the name of the podcast also. It's all on brand. But when people saw transformationcoach.me podcast, they're like, well, I don't really know what this is about. Now, the only thing I'm worried about with that name of Star Launch Boutique or Star Launch Lab, they may not get what you do or what you're talking about, because the focus on me is the word star. So it's almost like you're creating stars. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to launch you into stardom, sort of a thing, when really it's you are helping them launch programs, products, and services. You are like the launch doctor for like female entrepreneurs, or like that is the route that I would take. Like the program, product, service, launch doctor, or the launch optimizer, or optimize your launch, something like that. And then you put in the author name by Star Launch Boutique. So your business name is in the author spot, so it's still listed there and it's on brand in case people search that. That way we cover kind of both angles. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's cute.
So, all right, good. So, yeah, I would have, like, you want it to be very obvious what it is, what the show is about. Like, this show is called "Let's Talk About Your Podcast Launch Tips." Pretty obvious, but and I added that podcast launch tips in there as a subtitle just to make it super ultra obvious. My other show, Podcasting Business School, very obvious. So we don't want any potential confusion in the title, and we want some SEO optimization. Even think about, like, you've worked with so many entrepreneurs. What are their pain points? If they were searching for help with launches on Google, what would they type in? Like, how to launch, how to sell more, whatever. Like, maybe ask some of your clients or like your newsletter list, or next time you're on Clubhouse, I would go, hey, I'm kicking around the idea. I think I'm going to launch a podcast that teaches people how to, be better at launching, or whatever, however you want to phrase it. When you are looking for help in that area, what would you put into Google? What would you search in a podcast search engine, and just take notes? And like, those are the words that we want to use in the title, in the episode titles, in the podcast description, just listing those how-to questions or tips on statements, and you'll get way more people in front of your brand very quickly. Is that making sense?
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
Okay. So any questions so far from what we talked about there?
No, none so far. I mean, it's all pretty laid out.
Basic. It's basic stuff. Now, when it comes to, usually the next question, we're kind of mapping out a launch strategy, is the content itself. What am I going to say? People are always like, what am I going to say, Adam? How am I going to say it? Who am I talking to? And so as a goal of the show, are you looking to pull more business opportunities into your world? Will that be part of it? Like, I'm assuming you would love to get more clients that hire you for your launching services. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes. And for exposure, but I also had the thought of, what if I interviewed clients that are going through a launch themselves, because depending on, who my audience turns out to be, which is going to be a lot of entrepreneurs, but also a lot of people that could reach someone in the audience that that the client could potentially reach as well.
Yeah. So you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what I'm thinking. My goal for you, Christy, would be every time you turn on that microphone, you're either talking to a current client, which is going to help you recruit more clients as an example of what you can do, or you're talking to a potential client that could be somebody that hires you for your services. So very similar to like what we're doing here. Like I haven't hired you, you haven't hired me, but we both have services that we could purchase off each other. So there's that potential of, we build a relationship, we have a conversation, there's value added. And if it makes sense, it makes sense. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But like, I don't need you interviewing some like dentist about something or whatever. Like that doesn't make any sense. You know what I'm saying? Unless he's launching some product, then okay, that's who we're talking to. But I love the idea of you taking people along on a customer journey with a current, for lots of reasons, like a current client. Obviously that's you showing off what you can do, you breaking down your processes and having their feedback, happening live action. But then it's a great opportunity for them. Like you'll have no problem getting current clients or past clients because it's brand exposure for them. Like it's going to help with their launch. Like this is when we're launching, this is what we're selling. Honestly, I feel like this could be an upcharge for somebody if you wanted to, like, they pay this price. And if you want, you can come on my show and we do a full launch breakdown and you get to pitch your service to my audience at the end. Like that doesn't you don't have to charge for that as an upcharge. It could just be a part of what you do and a nice like attractor. But I think you could charge for that for sure, because that's awesome exposure, especially as your audience levels up. If you're like, yeah, I get, 5,000 downloads an episode or 5,000 downloads a month or whatever, and it's all entrepreneurs and they're looking for programs, products, and services like yours, they could sponsor an episode. So maybe they are on an episode and then you go, hey, just in case you want some extra exposure down the road, you can sponsor a future episode for $500 and we'll do a 1 minute, you can pitch for 1 minute or a 1 minute ad that I'll make sure people know that you're somebody that I've worked with, like something like that. That really makes a lot of sense to me. So how are those ideas hitting you so far?
And they're actually really on point with what I've considered potentially as I've been building this thought process. So it's great.
Good. Okay. Like I think that you could. Okay. So how do you feel about bringing somebody from the audience? I mean, kind of like how we met. Like we met on Clubhouse and I was like, hey, come on the show. Let's do this thing. Like you're an ideal person for me to talk to in this situation. How do you feel about that sort of situation? A non-client pulling them in and kind of doing like a launch audit. Like, are you ready to launch? I love an audit type process for this because you identify where they're at in the process. You go, okay, well, here's what I would like to get you to. Here's what you need to do, or here's what you need to hire me to do to get you there. And I think that will have a nice conversion rate. So some people get nervous about that though, or they're uncomfortable with that. How do you feel about that situation?
I hadn't actually considered that before. Because usually I'm getting clients like right in the beginning, or I'm getting clients that have launched and are kind of like, what did I do wrong? So I haven't really gotten anyone in the midst of their launch quite yet. So it's just, I haven't thought about that yet.
Okay. So imagine this, like you're on Clubhouse. I get those notifications. You're on Clubhouse all the time. Like I know this, like you're in there mingling around. Are you hosting your own rooms at all yet? Or are you just, okay. So yeah. Like I would have a room where the theme is I'm thinking about launching, like I launch prep, and you probably already have one. So that's the theme of the conversation. You have that conversation. And then at the end you go, if any of you want to go next level, I do have a podcast. I'm doing an upcoming series on people that are thinking about launching. I'm going to do a pre-launch audit. We're going to go through my checklist or a launch optimization audit or process or whatever you name it. And the real, I mean, our relationship here, this is a perfect example of this, quote unquote technique. I don't like to like make it seem transactional. Like I'm all about relationship building. Like this is a relationship building technique. You pull them off the sidelines of an audio platform, you get some eyeball time, you have a real conversation and you show value. And if you do that at a certain level and at a certain frequency, your income really skyrockets to where like I have people like just from the clubhouse rooms now, they're like, hey, let's just get started. Like, here's my credit card. Let's just go. And I'm like, this is amazing. So I think you could really crush it because people see the value in the launch and then they listen to your show and like, damn, Christy helped so-and-so make an extra 50K on their launch. Like, that's awesome. Like real results pulling them through. So I think you attack from different angles like that and you're pulling people out of your newsletter, your Instagram, your clubhouse audience, bring them in for an audit session like this, 30 minutes, 25 minutes, whatever, add a real value that shows off your skills, but it also, the people listening in, they're like, oh, what great ideas. Like I need to get with Christy to do one of these. And then they just fill themselves. And those are email list builders. Like you want to collect email addresses to get their information. And then now you can email market to them as well. So I think that's a home run. And if you launch your show, I'm going to highly encourage you to explore that opportunity. All right.
All right. Yeah. It sounds great, actually.
Okay. So let's talk about episode cadence, episode frequency, because this is usually the next area that people have questions. They're like, how much time is this really going to take? I'm running a full on business here, big guy. Like I can't add 40 hours a week of being a podcaster. So what worries do you have when it comes to like, how much time is this going to take? How often am I going to have to do this? Like that whole process, what questions or worrisome points do you have there?
I mean, I'm actually okay with, I've actually considered like a not bite size, but like 20 minutes. My commute personally to work is not that long.
Yeah.
And then I'm in Central Jersey, so I know the commute up to, New York City is like 2 hours. So it's just, I don't mind like a 20-minute. That I think that's doable. As far as frequency, I would love to have it every week if possible. Figuring out how to batch those episodes would be that. I think that right there is just setting aside the time with the content and being able to batch the episode. As far as starting to use clients or, incorporate the clients into the podcast, I think that won't be so challenging, just because I'll already have contact with the client as opposed to pulling someone that's fresh and brand new and trying to get them in and take a look at my schedule. Let's take a look at your schedule. That I think that's the hardest part, I think, that I can tell so far. But right now, I guess maybe content, really just making sure that I have enough. Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk strategy around this because you seem like a pretty organized person. I'm very organized. Like, I live by my Calendly links. I'm like, okay, even my friends, like, let's go have a coffee. I'm like, all right, grab a spot on my calendar with the Calendly link. You'll get an automated email reminder with the location. So that's how I roll. So if we ever have coffee, that just, we have expectations up front. So I like the word batch. I like the way that you use that because that's going to be very important where you could picture a scenario where if you have 20-minute episodes, one per week, that's about 80 minutes, maybe an hour. So we book off an hour and a half. All right. One day per month. You could just book off 90 minutes, block it off on your schedule, have your link, and that's where people choose from. Like it's right there. Or maybe you have 2 days per month just to give people some options. And maybe one of them is midday, the other one's in the evenings, or one weekend, one weekday, whatever. But you could get away with plenty of content just back to back to back. Like that's the way I like to roll when it comes to podcast creation. Like you're my fifth one of the day so far today, and it's only 2 p.m. But I'm rolling. By the time I hit 3 or 4 episodes or interviews in a row, I'm warmed up. I'm conversational. We're good to go. So I love batching, and then you're good for a month, and then whether you edit or you have somebody else edit for you, like that's a decision to make. But even if you do your own editing, it's not going to take you very long at all, especially with a 20-minute episode. So I like that a lot. And then you're just booking people into that schedule. Like these are my 2 days per month that I do it. Here's my August schedule. Here's my September schedule. I'd love to pull you in. Like you said, current clients, super easy. Like I still make them book though. That way it's all official and everything. And then that way, as people hear, like let's say you start pulling some people out of the audience, as people start to hear those episodes, you kind of advertise how to sign up for those, how to get that calendar link in the show notes. So then they start self-populating. So those are always just full, and you're just like, all right, I'm good for that for the next 4 months or whatever. But I think you could do this super effectively and efficiently, where it's not going to take a lot of time every single week, because I know that you're busy, like serving clients, and this is going to bring you even more ideally. And so it's going to be a real strong marketing lead generator. So how does that sound overall, as far as like batching 1-2 days per month, around 90 minutes, and then from there it's just editing?
Mm-hmm. Oh, it sounds good. It's just I don't know. I think it's just making sure that I have the content that would be a 20-minute span. I think that's like my golden time span.
Yeah.
But it'll, I hear that it changes all the time. So
yeah. I mean, honestly, for me, it's like when the conversation is done, when the information has been delivered, it's been delivered. So sometimes I do episodes that are 17 minutes long. Sometimes they're an hour long. It's just, and especially with you, how you can teach on launch tips, like product launch tips and things like that. Like what's gone well in the past, what hasn't gone well, like epic launch. I see an episode as like epic launch fails, like every once in a while, just like stuff that really went wrong, stories, that we can learn from, and then like have successes that kind of, were born out of that. So I think that I don't think content is going to be an issue for you at all, because you're working, you always have live examples. Another route that you could take from an expert interview perspective, like let's say there's somebody out there that you're kind of loosely affiliated with, that you could really help them, that like with a launch, they haven't hired you yet, and maybe they haven't thought about you in that way yet. You invite them on your show to talk about a product that they've launched in the past. You kind of break down their game plan a little bit. You just optimize a little bit here and there. I bet that would be a very successful way to kind of nudge your way into having a business relationship there as well. So you kind of would have that one as more of a longer shot. You've got current clients coming on to recap launch strategies, or if they're in the trenches currently, and then you're pulling people out of the audience for audit interviews. Like I think you're gonna have content coming out of your ears, honestly. Like, I think that it's gonna be super easy, and all of a sudden you're like, I'm 6 months booked out. This is great.
I hope so, right?
So, like, what is an ideal customer journey for you? If people are listening in to your show, that's something I like to paint with people that hire me to do this. It's like, all right, they're listening to your show. Where do we take them next? How do we pull them in a little bit closer? Like, obviously we've talked about having them on the show, but sometimes there needs to be a step before that, where like, do you have like a PDF checklist with tips or some sort of lead magnet downloadable that we could kind of warm them up with?
I actually have a couple. So I have an asset checklist that I actually just released on Clubhouse. Actually, I just had a whole talk, like a whole room on assets that you need for the launch. Whole checklist, like, did you edit it? Do you need the copy? Do you need the design of it? So I do have that available, but then I also have a checklist of decisions that you want to have made before you actually get to your open cart. So decisions like, what did I put on there? Decisions where you're showing up, how long you're showing up for, planning out, like, what are you talking about, your email campaign, that you want to have a couple of invitations out there for your live sales event. So just a couple of decisions that you want prior.
Okay. So I think those are both awesome, but I have to admit, I got distracted by the phrase open cart. I think that might be something that we put into the name of the show, because I feel like that is a term that people that are launching, they know, like open cart, that's a big deal. Like that's like the goal. Like the journey to open cart, but then like the subtitle, I don't know. I just want you to file that one away. I feel like that would be like that's a term that people launching things know. So something open cart, product launch tips or something like that. So, okay. Or in the description, optimizing your journey to open cart, something descriptive like that. I think I'll make a note as well. That's how my brain works, Christy. It's like squirrel. She said a thing. So I think, I think that timing wise, people are launching more online businesses now than ever. Courses, books, coaching, all of that. So you being in this space, and then you coming in with the audio, the audio asset with a podcast, because I know you said your typical people are super busy, they're overwhelmed, like they're into all the things, so maybe they don't have time to sit down and watch a YouTube video. Like maybe they just want to be having Christy in their earbuds at 1.5 speed while they drive their kids to work, and then they go back, you know what I'm saying, or while they're getting their treadmill time in. So I really think that you showing up, it seems like a product launch or program launch service like you, maybe I'm wrong, but you want to get a few exposures in with these people. It may not be like a quick sale. They may not be ready to launch, but all of a sudden they know they're going to launch something later on this year, and you're in their earbuds every single week. And they're like, I've learned so much. I at least need to come on our show and do an audit. And then like, if they're primed like that, they've been listening to you for 15 weeks and then they come and do an audit, I would bet money they're going to hire you in some way, shape, or form to actually help them and optimize their launch. So, I think you're primed for this. So, okay, I've spoke my piece. I've tried to convince you that this is something you need to do. What other podcasting questions do you have? Is there anything left that we need to cover that you're like, I have no idea what to do about this part of podcasting?
I have the tech. I have like my microphone ready, set to go. As far as, I guess now, I guess my question would be recording myself at the same time as the audio. I guess making it a video as well.
Yeah.
Because I know that video, of course, it could be repurposed and put out there and used as content later. Just a matter of, I don't think I could handle a whole nother social media because I'm on Clubhouse already.
Yeah.
Instagram, and then Facebook. Of course, I'm there as well. Just your email campaign. So overwhelming yourself too much, but I don't think I could handle YouTube at the same time. I know it's kind of like connected already, but it's still a whole nother platform to curate and to focus. But I guess it would be beneficial to record it video wise as well.
Yeah. Well, let's just talk low hanging fruit. And as we get to know each other as pod pals, Christy, you'll know that I'm pretty much an open book, and I'll just tell you my exact strategies for everything. Like it is what it is. So like you can just record on Zoom and you're good. Like it's super cheap and it's easy. Now what we're recording on here is called StreamYard. And this is like I think I pay $20 per month, and it allows me to stream live into 3 locations. So right now we're live on Facebook, my Facebook personal page, Facebook business page, and YouTube. You could also connect to LinkedIn. All right. So if you're on that platform, the advantage that this gives you with like you're showing up live in these places, honestly, like for me, it's very transactional with YouTube because I want to be in that Google search engine. That's why like I keyword stuff my YouTube. Like it's like, what would you like to put in the YouTube description? And I'm just like podcasting tips, podcasting launch, launching a podcast, how to launch a podcast. I just put all the words in there. It's like no one even wants to read it, but it's just all the keywords. So it's just getting in Google rankings. All right. And it works because when I have somebody on that has a podcast and I put their podcast name in the episode title, Like they'll search their show and my YouTube video will be one of the first things that they see for their show. So it does work, but I put zero effort into YouTube. Once we hit in broadcast, I don't even go and look at it. Like I know it shows up, all this stuff that you see on the screen. It looks pretty. It took me 5 minutes to set up. It's super easy to do, like the ticker thing and the background and all that. So it's just, it kind of classes it up a little bit. And then I like to do a highlight video. Like I'll spend 10 minutes doing a highlight video of each episode, just so that my guest has a video asset of us talking that's a little more shareable sometimes, especially in like Instagram stories and things like that. Like you said, you can repurpose it. And there are plenty of companies that you can hire that will do assets for you. Maybe you can even trade somebody out. I'll help with your launch if you do my social media assets for me. But I think that, time investment wise and money investment wise, like low hanging fruit, you could do Zoom and just put out the audio. Don't stress out about creating this whole like marketing campaign thing. Because if you SEO optimize with your podcast name, the podcast description, and your episode titles, that going out into the internet wilderness is going to bring more people to your show, whether you talk about it on Clubhouse, whether you talk about it on Instagram or not. Now, would I recommend like going on your stories and mentioning it that there's a new episode? Yeah, that's pretty easy, but it doesn't have to be this big production. So lowest hanging fruit, just record audio, put it out, and name stuff efficiently, because really you're going to build your business through these people that you're bringing onto the show, people that start to listen to the show. So it's going to come from the audio audience, not necessarily Instagram or Clubhouse. Now, can we start to plug those people into your audio? Yeah, sure we can. Like you're hosting a Clubhouse room, I would definitely like drop the fact, hey, you just released an episode with so-and-so. Maybe so-and-so is in the room with you. Like that's a strategy that I use. Past guests, I try to drag them into my Clubhouse room and go, hey, this is Allison Melody. She was episode 93 of Podcasting Business School. Make sure you check it out. We talked about XYZ. Or here are the Biz Bros. They're episode 172. We talked about blah, blah, blah. So I kind of like name drop their episodes just to get people plugged in, because I want to be in their earbuds every single week. That's a huge advantage where, like email marketing, we can market to people, but 30% is a good open rate. Whereas if somebody hits the subscribe button on your podcast, that shows up every week, 100% delivery. And that's kind of a nice place to be when we're marketing to people. So I wouldn't stress, I would start really efficient. And like, I'm just gonna kick audio out. I'm gonna start really, telling people hit that subscribe button, get plugged into my world, start inviting some people onto the show, have my current clients onto the show, start to kind of fill that up. And then you get a little roster going. Maybe you invite some people into Clubhouse that have been on the show and you kind of stir it up there, or you do an Instagram live with somebody and kind of stir it up there. But I wouldn't make this big, like intense, I've got to have 12 videos and post every day. Like I do that, but I'm a full-time podcaster about podcasting. So that's kind of like, it's totally different. Does that make sense?
Right.
Okay. So is that helpful though, as far as like mitigating the responsibility of everything you're gonna have to do?
Well, it's funny because I completely forgot that we were on StreamYard, and then I have StreamYard. So but condensing that and making it a little more streamlined, so much more inviting and friendly. So yeah, definitely. And as far as episodes, sorry, going back to timing. Yeah. So I was thinking, since it's going to be 20 minutes, but I know interviews usually go a little longer just because it is conversation. Like, yeah, does that affect the listeners?
No, like interesting episodes are interesting episodes. I'll listen to shows that are 2 hours long because it's interesting for 2 hours. I'll listen to them for 17 minutes because it's interesting for 17 minutes. I think I wouldn't put any time constraints on it initially for you. That's why you might, like your first 4 episodes that you launch with, which is what I recommend, having 4 kind of out there all at once. Just kind of don't put any time restraints on it, and just kind of just have great conversations. Be curious. Once your curiosity is kind of running out, that's when the episode's done. Obviously, if you book an hour, like we booked an hour, I'm not going to take you for 2 hours and be like, hope you can block off the rest of your day and hang out with me. I have had people do that before. That happens on Clubhouse a lot, by the way. Like I'm newer to Clubhouse, and I'm learning Clubhouse etiquette. And all of a sudden my friend's like, hey, come and speak in my room. We're going from this time to this time. And then it's like 3 times that much. I'm like, I can't be hanging out for 3 hours. And then they get pissed if you leave the room because you're a mod. I'm like, oh man, I got to start communicating more effectively. So I'm learning Clubhouse etiquette, but no, I think just like have some great conversations for your first 4, see how long they go, see how you feel about it. As long as your curiosity is there, keep asking questions, keep having conversation, whether it's a client and you're having them kind of unveil what worked with their launch, or if it's somebody that's a guest expert or whatever. Like I wouldn't stress out about it at all. Like that's something that a lot of podcasters that are getting newer to the game, they're kind of getting into it. They really stress out about how long they should all be, and they should always be 20 to 25 minutes. And it's like a lot of the fancy podcasters, like the Pat Flynn's and the John Lee Dumas, is like, by my metrics, you must have this because of the that's how long it takes the average person to drive to work. I'm like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, they're going to drive to work every day, so they listen to half of it now and the half of it on the way home. Like they don't have to complete it on that. And so I don't buy into that, because I'm in the trenches, Christy. Like I'm in the current trenches of podcasting, and I feel like it's a different world. So, I think as far as your brand goes, it's custom made for podcasting. You're helping people. You're helping in a place that's very audio friendly. It's very descriptive. Like I'm very curious about it. Like I can't wait to have you on my other show and really dive into launches, because I'm just so curious about it. So, I think that's a good sign that like this isn't an underwater basket weaving podcast. Like this is something that I think a lot of people are very interested in, but you can still niche it down and serve the type of entrepreneur that you want to serve. That would be an ideal listener and then potentially an ideal client. So, yeah. Any other questions you want to cover before we sign off today?
Just one more.
Yeah, let's do it.
The first 4, like I know how often I'm going to raise my hand. I'm going to say I'm that person who, if I find you, I'm going all the way back to your first episode because I want to hear it.
Love it.
Not the trailer, but like your first content episode. So like, what do you suggest as that content that you first put out there? Because not everybody goes back to it. I get that. But what about for those people that do? Yeah.
So I think just the fact that you are one of those people that gets into a show and goes back to the beginning, like you're my favorite person ever. Like you're the type of person that I love as a podcaster. And just to put this out there, this is why I love being a guest on for somebody that's just launching a show, because of what you just stated. I either want to be in their first 4 episodes or their most recent episode. Those are the 2 best places to be a guest as far as brand exposure. So that being said, with the first 4, I look at it like a buffet. Like we're going to give them a little sampling, a little appetizer platter of some different sorts of things. So your first one, like the trailer or episode 0, whatever you call it, I want you to talk about your story, this brand story, how you're wanting to impact people, and then your goals for the show, like what people can expect from the show and your brand. Just let them into your world a little bit, and sometimes that's hard for people to do because you don't like to talk about yourself because you feel like I'm being fancy about this or whatever. And if that is something that is the case, then you have a friend or a podcast mentor or a seasoned podcaster like myself interview you for your initial All About Me episode. So that's something I do for my clients quite a bit, where like I kind of know where this needs to go and I just walk them through it, and it kind of just helps them break the ice a little bit. So there's that episode. Then I would love to give them a sampling of, here is somebody that's a current client that, going through the launch process, what worked, what didn't work. Maybe you toss out one of those launch epic fails, episodes. Like this was like the crash and burn, what we learned from this situation. Maybe you pull somebody on that's a guest expert interview, like we talked about. Maybe you do, somebody that hasn't launched yet, that isn't a client, and you do an audit session. So I want a nice little sampling. And then when you launch, so this is why you're so perfect for this, during launch week of your podcast, like you use all the things that you know what to do, and you go into launch mode, and you're going to crush it. That's why I'm like, you have to do this because you are a launch expert. And like, you're going to look at those first 4 or 5 episodes and people are going to vote with their downloads. You know what I'm saying? So you look and you go, all right, episode 3 where I pulled a former client up and we went through their whole process, what worked, what didn't. People love that. So I'm going to do some more of those. Or people might do a solo episode, and people might really love like a short, quick tip episode. I've been doing those for this show, like 7 minutes about just podcast launch tips, quick hitter, 7-minute, let's go. And people are liking that. So maybe you get feedback on that. And this is when you send your email list out and you go, hey, vote with your downloads. Let me know what you like, what you don't like. Give me feedback, and we're going to do more of that. But that way you've got a fighting chance, because some people may be like, oh, sometimes people do interviews and they're like, I hate listening to interviews. But you had the idea of, well, my first 4 are going to be interviews, and then every other week I'm going to do a solo episode. Well, we need to show them what that would be like. You know what I'm saying? Like, whatever the show might be like, it needs to be in that first 4, just so they get a nice sampling of, maybe they don't like episode 1, but they love episode 2 through 4. So they're in. As long as we can get them to love one of those, they might hit that subscribe button, and you might be their new person in their earbuds every Monday when they walk on the treadmill or whatever. So Is that making sense?
No, that's actually great. That was so much more direction than I've received ever about that question. That was like my question that's never been answered.
Excellent. So yeah, like straight up, what I would do, I'm not a big episode 0 guy or even a trailer guy. I just say episode 1, here it is, my story. So that's the first one that you put out. Then I think you definitely go with a client. Like, let's show off. You bring them in. This was their launch. Here was our strategy. Here were the results. Here's what really went well. Then maybe an expert in the space that they have like a tangential relationship. Maybe they are like a social media expert or an email marketing expert. It's like a piece of what you do. You know what I'm saying? And maybe they're a good like referral relationship too. I wouldn't do something that directly competes with you, but somebody it's a nice compliment. You know what I'm saying? Like an Instagram expert or something like that, or a podcasting expert that's bald and very friendly. I don't know. So that's the 3rd episode. Then the 4th episode, I would love for you to find somebody that is not a client, that hasn't, that is going to launch, and you map out like their launch game plan or their like a launch audit, like put them through your process, like that initial checklist, and add a little bit of value and show off there. So I think that's a killer first 4 lineup. You see what you like, you see what they like, you see what your audience likes, and then we can kind of get a rhythm from there where maybe you just go in that 4 style rotation. So week 1 is solo, week 2 is client, week 3 is expert, week 4 is audit. Or maybe you bounce back and forth between one and the other every other week. Like, you'll find a cadence and a rhythm, but you've got 4 like really solid styles of episodes that you can do there that I think you could really, serve your audience really well with. Cool.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Yes. Well, I can't wait for you to launch your show. I'm going to be your first subscriber, and I'm going to learn a ton. So website, www.starlaunches.boutique. That's BOUTIQUE, in case you're not a great speller like me. Starlaunches.boutique. Check out what Christy has going on there. And you hang out on Clubhouse. So what do you have your own club on Clubhouse? Like, give us the deets on Clubhouse where people can connect to you on there.
Well, my club on there is Star Launches a Boutique, so making that real simple. And that just connects to my Instagram, which is also starlaunches.boutique. So trying to just keep it all organized. But my schedule's changing. My summer schedule is kind of ending. So now it's my evenings, my full year schedule is coming back. So as far as, Clubhouse, I'm in there first thing in the morning, and then I'm in there a little later in the evening. So getting to those Pacific Standard Time people who just, because 7 a.m. Eastern Standard, that's the time that I am. It's like rocking. There's so many people on. And then kind of PST time, they kind of wake up around 11 is when, they start showing. So I'm trying out a different time.
Yeah. I feel like the East Coast people are more hardcore, like early morning people, and the California people like to sleep in a little bit, is what I found. But I know you're out on the East Coast. I'm in Indiana. We're on Eastern Standard Time, so yeah, I always end up picking up a lot of followers from like the UK and India, because I'm on Clubhouse like 3 a.m. So I'm like, I'm up. I might as well have it on, and only people from the UK and India are on there talking to me. So Adventures in Clubhouse. Well, Christy, my friend, I'm super excited for you. I'm very proud of you for just exploring this idea. I think it's a green light from me. And as a true pod pal, I would tell you, be like, not so sure about this one. Not, the Weed Whacker podcast. I don't know if that audience is going to be there for you, but like Star Launch Boutiques, that this is something that needs to be out there. Yeah. So I want people to connect with you. www.starlaunches.boutique. Get it and get plugged in and stay tuned for a podcast. So everybody that's tuning in, if you want to come on the show, just like Christy, hit me up, hit the link in the show notes, and we'll get you on. If you are thinking about launching your podcast, I've got my podcast launch blueprint. It is available. Go to the website, www.podcastingbusiness.school. And with that, I will send you out into the world wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. We'll see you on the next episode.